Welcome to AK Anime Explainer. Today is explanation of Soul Land 3, Legend of the Dragon King Part 284. Without any delay, start explanation. Tang Wulin had once come to this city with his companions before. After a brief moment of rest, their unit went their way. Bear Lord did not reappear before them. They did not know if it went to nurse its wounds or was afraid of them. Before entering the range of the military raiders, they removed their black mechas and replaced them with more ordinary equipment. They rented a few cross-country vehicles and drove towards Mingju City. The army had already settled issues with their identities beforehand. The Blood God Army had quotas for a number of retirees each year. It was a piece of cake for the army to settle a few identities. Other than Tang Wulin, there was no need to cover up identities for the others. The current name on Tang Wulin's ID was Long Yu. Tang Wulin sat on the co-driver's seat and looked at the passing scenery outside the window. However, his brain was working overtime. Leaving the Blood God Army was equivalent to losing his most powerful protection. Tang Wulin believed that his ability was still very obvious. As long as someone was persistent enough, there was a possibility that his identity would be found out. Fortunately, when Shrek Academy was under attack, the final rank 9 fixed soul ammunition had covered him very well. Most of the people had thought that he was dead from the explosion. Moreover, he was not overly popular on the continent. The people from Shrek Academy that were truly under the spotlight were of the Sea God Pavilion. His popularity on Star Luo continent was greater than on Doluo continent. This was especially true since they were still learning on Demon Island. Of course, it would certainly be insufficient to restore Shrek Academy to its former glory by just relying on their strengths alone. Even Tang sect was still being suppressed at the current moment. The first thing he had to do was to gather all the forces he could. At the very least, when he raised Shrek Academy's flag again, it would not be instantly overturned. When he reminisced about his teachers and fellow schoolmates from Shrek Academy, his heart throbbed with pain. Not long ago they were still learning and growing together. He had only truly felt the pain of losing his home in Shrek. However, he even lost his great stable family in the end. It seemed that his cultivation base had been improving at a quicker pace in these recent years. He was finally a high-ranking soul master. However, his heart hoped to be with his family and friends. He sought greater strength to better protect them. However, he seemed to be losing even the people whom he could protect right now. He shook his head lightly as he cleared his mind of these negative emotions. He clenched his fists. Happiness must be fought for by himself. He closed his eyes and organized his thoughts. He wanted to restore Shrek and find his parents. All of this had to be done from scratch. The weariness of the journey was nothing for high-ranking soul masters such as them. 2 days later they finally arrived at the federal capital, Mingju City. When they entered Mingju City's boundary, the first thing they felt was extreme modernization. All kinds of soul cars sped past them on the streets which were lined with tall buildings on both sides. The tall buildings presented a pleasant sight. They could occasionally catch glimpses of patrolling mechas in the skies. Their silhouettes looked dazzling. In truth, Mingju City's security was very good. There was no real need for patrolling. These mechas served more to inspire interest in the younger generation toward all military things. Ever since the Hawk faction gained the upper hand after the federal parliament's re-election, the influence of the military in the Federation grew greatly. It seemed as if war could break out at any time. Although he had been spending his time within the Blood God Army, Tang Wulin had immersed himself in researching the Federation's current state before he departed on the way here. Currently, negative reports of the Star Luo continent and Dolor continent were the main topics of interest in the Federation. The media even dug up old hates that were thousands of years old. Without a doubt, this was a tactic to instill hatred toward Star Luo continent and Dolor continent by spreading rumors. It appeared that it was highly likely that the Federation would go to war at any time. Tang Wulin was opposed to war. He detested it. However, he could not deny that if war truly broke out, it might be an opportunity for him. The three continents were far away from each other. If the Dolor Federation wanted to wage war with the other two continents, it would certainly tire its troops on a long expedition. Even though Sol planes had been developed right now, airspace control by airplanes alone could not settle a war. Moreover, even if the Star Luo Empire and Do Spirit Empire were not as powerful as the Federation, they would not be much weaker. Once a war starts, it was not something that could be settled in a short amount of time. This would also inevitably lead to the weakening of the military forces within Dolor Federation. The other great forces would even join in the war efforts to obtain greater benefits in the future. Wars were waged to fight for benefits. The various resources in the Dolor Federation were slowly drying up. If it were not for Star Luo continents and Do Spirit continents' richer resources, why would the Federation be publicly preparing to start a war? Since there were benefits to be reaped, there was no reason that the great clans and forces would just sit around and continue looking. This was especially true for great forces such as Spirit Pagoda, which had a presence on all three continents. To improve its combat strength, the Spirit Ascension platform's business would inevitably improve. The prices of the soul spirits would only soar. It was also worth mentioning that the number of Soul Masters Spirit Pagoda controlled was great as well. Recently, there was another piece of information that piqued Tang Wulin's interest. It seemed that Spirit Pagoda had developed man-made 1,000 years and 10,000 years spirit souls. The success in developing 10,000 years spirit souls had substantially improved Spirit Pagoda's standing on the continent once again. 10,000 years spirit souls meant that the Soul Master's strength could be improved substantially. They could even reduce the general demand for their spiritual power. After all, a 10,000 years spirit soul could bring a Soul Master 4 soul skills at most. This way they could reduce the need to absorb more soul spirits. Naturally, it was said that the prices for 10,000 soul spirits were very high. Ever since they were promoted among the high-ranking Soul Masters, it quickly filled Spirit Pagoda's coffers. The Spirit Pagoda even lowered the prices of their latest successfully developed 1,000-year spirit souls. For the time their business was flourishing. It would not be exaggerating to describe their wealth as being comparable to a country's. It was said that the winds would damage the flourishing trees in a forest. However, judging by Spirit Pagoda's current situation, it did not seem to have such problems. They even became the great founder behind the military's Hawk faction. This information was the fruits of Tang Wulin's research throughout these few days. Without a doubt, the greatest benefactor from Shrek Academy's destruction and Tang sect's demise was Spirit Pagoda. Now it had truly become the greatest force on the continent. Of course, it had been a great force all along. But back then its influence was still balanced off and restricted by Shrek Academy with its high social standing and Tang sect. However, this restriction was now non-existent. Spirit Pagoda could accumulate wealth by unfair means without any care and do whatever they want to do. When he thought about this, a name naturally appeared in Tang Wulin's mind, the Holy Spirit cult. Ever since his first encounter with the evil Soul Master, He had lost count of the times he had crossed paths with evil soul masters. The feelings that the evil soul masters gave him were cruel, vicious, evil, and mysterious. That was right. Up until now, he and the other great forces of the continent had no idea where these evil soul masters came from, where they were, and what structure their organization took. Nobody knew anything about them. This led to the situation where they could appear anywhere on the continent. Even the recent abyssal plains disturbance was related to them. This was cracking their brains. If the abyssal plane invaded their world, who knew how many people would lose their lives? However, the Holy Spirit cult had done exactly that. They did it cold-bloodedly. What benefit would they receive if all living beings were reduced to ashes? The Holy Spirit cult was undoubtedly the greatest enemy he had to face. Although he was slightly suspicious of Spirit Pagoda, at least for now he did not have any actual proof connecting Spirit Pagoda with the Great Explosion. The next thing on his agenda was to understand the Holy Spirit cult. The most terrifying part of it was not its collective strength, but its concealed and dark nature. The mysterious Holy Spirit cult was the most terrifying one. When you do not understand your enemy, they could appear before you at any time and turn into your most terrifying adversary. Take their recent experience as an example. If Blood 9 had not staked his own life by igniting his live flame and Blood God Army's reactions were not fast enough, the ambush could have resulted in a great tragedy. However, how should he go about understanding the Holy Spirit cult? These evil soul masters were not only strong, but their determination was also unlike any ordinary person. According to what they currently knew, even if they managed to catch an evil soul master, they would be capturing a dead body. They had a plethora of secret techniques to end their own lives. Tang Wulin could not help but frown when he thought about this. There was still a lot that he needed to understand. Since his enemy was hidden, he could not afford to quickly expose himself as well. Unless... Tang Wulin squinted his eyes slightly and a plan started developing in his mind. They entered Mingju City and proceeded to look for a place to settle down. Before they proceed to the inner parts of the continent, Tang Wulin had to understand the general state of affairs in the capital, especially regarding the situation following the change in leadership of the Federation. However, when he prepared to find a place to stay, he discovered another problem. "Senior disciple brother, do you have some money?" Tang Wulin asked a Ruheng who sat at the back with a slightly awkward tone. "Money? What for?" A Ruheng caressed his big bald head. Tang Wulin shifted his gaze towards Sima Jinkai as the latter replied, "I still have a few tens of thousands." Tang Wulin's lips twitched. It seemed that he had not much cash on him as well. He could not believe that they had overlooked such an important aspect. It would not be a problem if there were only 3 of them. Tens of thousands were enough for them to journey into the mainland. However, there was 27 of them. Whether it was food for the men or transport, they needed the money, and they needed a lot of it. Regardless of what they wanted to do, they had to solve their financial problem first. Even rebuilding Shrek Academy in the future would require large sums of money. A small bag of coins would not be enough. Tang Wulin rubbed his temple. He always knew that he would have to face a lot of pressure and problems if he wanted to rebuild Shrek Academy. However, he never expected that the first problem he would have to face to be money. They found a comparatively normal-looking hotel and checked in. After they had their lunch, Tang Wulin noticed that they needed more money for their expenses as compared to what he had expected. They were all cultivators in their prime. Their appetite. He finally understood why his companions back then displayed the expressions they did when they saw him eating. They must earn money. Earn money? How would he do that? The first thing he thought about was forging. As a rank 7 Saint craftsman, there was nothing else he could do to earn as quickly it. However, if he forged, there was a possibility of him exposing his identity. After all, for such a young Saint craftsman, wait, young? Tang Wulin's eyes suddenly brightened. He had been cultivating in the Blood God Army recently. How could he have forgotten something he was skilled at? Tang Wulin called Sima Jinkai, a Ruheng, Ma Shan, Jiang Wuyue, Long Yushue, and Ling Wuyue into his room. "I'm going out for a bit. The objective of our current trip is quite obvious. Try your best to stay indoors and wait for me in the hotel. When I'm not around, who should be in charge when he was not around? Tang Wulin's gaze scanned the faces of the people before him. He could not help but feel awkward. There was no doubt in that Aruhang and Sima Jinkai were the most powerful ones among them, but these two were not skilled in leading. Moreover, they were not on good terms with each other. Allowing them to take charge was not a good idea. Not creating trouble would be difficult for them. Ma Shan was a suitable candidate, but Aruhang and Sima Jinkai were much stronger than him. Would they submit to him? Who's in charge? Ling Wuyue asked with a faint smile on her face. She saw the awkward situation Tang Wulin was in. Tang Wulin nodded. Our Blood Dragon unit needs a co-captain. When I'm not here, the co-captain will assume command. That's why I gathered all of you here. I wanted to ask who among you is willing to shoulder this responsibility. Ling Wuyue shrugged. Not me. Jiang Wuyue glanced at Ma Shan. As Ma Shan's subordinate, he immediately shook his head without hesitation. Aruhang turned to look at Sima Jinkai. There seemed to be sparks flying out of both their eyes. They appeared ready to fight it out at the slightest hint of disagreement. Ma Shan looked awkward. These two were so wild and intractable that there was no way he could handle them without Tang Wulin. He did not have enough strength. I'll do it. A voice nobody had expected came at this very moment. It also attracted everyone's attention. Long Yuxue calmly looked at Tang Wulin. When you're not around, I'll take charge. Let me be the co-captain. You? Jiang Wuyue looked at Long Yuxue with shock. Long Yuxue glanced at him. Do you have something to say? Jiang Wuyue hastily shook his head. Ling Wuyue giggled. Little sister Yuxue is going to be the co-captain? That's good, that's good. A smile appeared on the edge of Ma Shan's lips, but he did not make a sound. The two strong men who were having a contest with sparks in their eyes shivered at the same time. This was because the scene of the heavy ion beam affecting the Bear Lord's body was replayed in their minds. That weapon. It was truly terrifying. You guys don't have any objections either? Long Yuxue dryly asked. Sima Jinkai was never skilled in leading, so he nodded. Aruhang shrugged. I don't mind. All right, it's me then. Will this do? The final three words were directed at Tang Wulin. Tang Wulin looked at his primary senior officer from the Blood God Army with shock. He never thought that the problem in his heart would be settled so easily by her. He could not help but look at her in a different light now. Long Yuxue said to Tang Wulin, if there's no problem, then you should go do what you have to. Do you need any one of us to go with you? Tang Wulin shook his head. There's no need for that first. I'm just going to find some information. I'll be back soon. Make sure everyone stays inside the hotel. If it's possible, don't gather everyone in the same place. Just wait for me. All right. Long Yuxue did not say much. One word was all she muttered. Ling Wuyue said with a smile, Captain, I think you have a great butler here. Tang Wulin looked at Long Yuxue, who was also looking at him with keen sparkling eyes. Tang Wulin wanted to thank her, but he did not know why he could not say the words. The others scattered, leaving only Long Yuxue behind. Do contact us anytime you need something. There's one more thing I want to remind you about. We who are trained by the Blood God Army are all-rounders. We're not only skilled in combat, but we're highly trained in other areas as well. If there's something you need us to do, I suggest that you give orders for everyone to do it. You'd be wasting resources by having everyone gather here and do nothing, Long Yuxue told Tang Wulin. Tang Wulin nodded. You have a point. I was also thinking about that. Thank you, Yuxue. Long Yuxue shook her head. I'm your subordinate right now. These are things that I should do, you don't have to thank me. If there's nothing else, I'll take my leave. Tang Wulin felt a warmth spread in his heart as he looked at her receding back. He was genuinely thankful that there was someone who wanted to help him. A disappointed look appeared on Long Yushue's beautiful face as she exited Tang Wulin's room. In the end, her personality had dictated her course of action. Even if she knew that it was impossible, she would persist for what she had made up in her mind. If she had the best choice, she would never settle for second best. She might have inherited such stubbornness from her father. At least she was by his side for now. Maybe, someday. Half an hour after when Tang Wulin silently left the hotel, he had taken on a whole new appearance. He appeared to be in his 40s, a middle-aged man who was not pleasing to the eye. His body appeared well-built, but his stature was shorter by half a head than his original height. Such an appearance would almost go unnoticed in the crowd. This was the art of disguise he learned from the Demon Island. It must be known that the secret techniques and little tricks he learned on Demon Island could even be used to alter the colors of his soul rings, let alone his appearance. After he exited the hotel, Tang Wulin did not go to the Blacksmiths Association directly. Instead, he took a soul taxi and gave the driver an address. The taxi drove on steadily. About half an hour later, he arrived at his destination. Tang Wulin alighted as he raised his head to look at this shop before him. Benevolence Hall sounded like a name that could not possibly be any more ordinary. The cross that marked its signage signified that it was a medicine shop. It was of a rather medium scale. Not too large or too small, and everything in it seemed quite inconspicuous. Tang Wulin pushed open the door and entered. There were not many customers inside the store and only 3 or 4 staff members. Rows of storage shelves displayed all sorts of commonly used remedies. Tang Wulin walked among the shelves leisurely and picked up a few medicines from them before he came to the cashier. The attendant at the register took a glance at the items he chose and had a slight change of expression. He raised his head and looked toward Tang Wulin. "Sir, these medicines that you've chosen are not used for just a single illness. Are you sure this is correct?" Tang Wulin smiled. "The medicines I bought are not for healing illnesses, but for sustenance." The attendant hastily replied, "Those are medicines which can be toxic. How can you consume it like food?" Tang Wulin answered, "It's fine. I have a good appetite." The attendant nodded. "Please follow me then. Let our in-house physician take a look at you." The conversation between the two of them sounded mundane, but in reality, it was a series of secret codes. Everything from the moment Tang Wulin began to pick up the medicines contained a hidden message. Tang Wulin followed the attendant as they walked to the door by the side. The attendant brought him to an elevator on the 2nd floor without saying a word. Upon boarding the elevator, it only had buttons for the 2nd and 3rd floors. However, the attendant began knocking rapidly against one of the elevator's metallic walls. After he had knocked rhythmically several dozen times, the electronic display on the elevator revealed the button for another floor. The elevator descended and opened its door. The attendant signaled for Tang Wulin to exit the elevator before walking out himself. Even though it was 2 levels underground, the place was brightly lit. They crossed a passage and arrived at a spacious subterranean cellar. There were a lot of people bustling about as if they were assembling something. With his sharp eyes, Tang Wulin could tell that the object they were putting together was related to mecha components. Moreover, those were all components of a high-ranking mecha and also some core installations. Tang Wulin asked nothing and remained quiet the whole time. The attendant eventually led him to a room. Inside was a middle-aged man, appearing just as inconspicuous as Tang Wulin. "There are 7 monsters in the original Tang sect. Which monster are you?" Tang Wulin smiled, removing an object from his chest pocket and passing it over to the man. "The 3rd in line. The original Shrek 7 monsters established the Tang sect, but the founder was not the leader of the Shrek 7 monsters at the time. It was Tang sect's first ancestor, Tang San, who ranked 3rd in age. Before leaving the Blood God army, the Heartless Dolor gave Tang Wulin something. It was all the secret strongholds of the Tang sect on the continent. Every stronghold was completely separate, so even they were unaware of each other's existence. Only the highest-ranking officials of the Tang sect knew their locations. Meanwhile, the token in Tang Wulin's possession belonged to the Dolor Hall. It was a command token, not very big and in the shape of a rhombus. The words Tang San were engraved on one side of the token while the other side had the words Tang Sect. Tang Sect, Tang San. For some reason, Tang Wulin had a peculiar feeling in his heart every time he saw these four words. It was as if the name itself was very closely related to him personally. The man had only taken one glance upon receiving the command token before he immediately stood up. His eyes were filled with astonishment. Then, he walked to the front of an instrument located by the side and fed the token into it. A light screen appeared. Life can be heartless, but you may still meet people full of passion. The heartless man was once passionate as well. The image of the two phrases attached to a sword blinked 7 times on the light screen. 7 lights, just like the Hall Master's personal visit. He removed the command token. When he looked at Tang Wulin once again, his gaze had changed completely. He spoke respectfully. Tang Sect, Mingju Division Manager, Ji Qi welcomes the ambassador. The command token given to Tang Wulin by the Heartless Dolor was of highest rank available to the Dolor Hall. One was granted the authority to move all the Tang Sect's resources with this command token. It was the first time this manager ever encountered a person of such a rank. Ever since the Tang Sect's headquarters was destroyed by the Godkiller rank fixed soul ammunition, they had maintained a low profile and remained quiet. The great divisions had all shrank on the surface. Even as such, they were still being harassed by many parties. At present, the appearance of the highest rank command token in Tang Wulin's hand was a great surprise to this division manager. Tang Wulin sized up the person before his eyes. Ji Qi had a tall, brawny figure and a fair complexion. He was slightly chubby, so he appeared very good-natured when he cracked a smile. He had an honest appearance that posed no threat to man or beast. Hello. There's no need to be formal. I would like to understand the current situation in Mingju, especially after the change in Mingju's top-level personnel. Do you have a detailed name list? Asked Tang Wulin upon taking the command token back. Yes, we do. Please hold on. Ji Qi was a very efficient person. Soon, a name list was placed before Tang Wulin. The Federal Parliament decides the Federation's affairs, with the Speaker acting as the Federation's highest authority. However, the Federation still exercises overall control of the Speaker as well. On the surface, it appears to be an extremely fair leadership system, but in reality, there are all sorts of dirty deeds going on in the Federation. Many senators' benches are controlled by the great forces. Ji Qi explained to Tang Wulin, ever since the unification of the continent 10,000 years ago, the Federation had utilized this parliamentary system. In the beginning, it had genuinely allowed the Federation to develop rapidly. However, with the passing of time, all sorts of outside forces began to infiltrate the parliament for their own benefit. The originally fair and just system began to change soundlessly behind the scenes. Until now, the Federation's final decisions are unrelated to what the people voted for and completely depend on which side has more control over the seats. After Shrek Academy's destruction, the Federation was under such a tremendous amount of pressure that the Parliament was dismissed temporarily. The Speaker at the time took the blame and resigned. More than 2/3 of the new generation of Parliament members were newly chosen. It was also a major shuffling of forces. Tang Wulin interrupted, Brother Ji. I don't have a good understanding of the parliamentary constitution. Can you please explain to me in more detail, including the differences between each faction? Ji Qi nodded and said, there's a total of 231 seats in the federal parliament, so there are 231 members of parliament. This is confirmed after multiple adjustments. Every member of the parliament is selected by elections in different regions. Bigger cities will certainly have their own members of parliament and sometimes more than one, while the smaller cities may not necessarily even have one. These 231 members form the entire federal parliament. 42 bureau members are elected out of these members. These 42 bureau members are inclusive of 1 speaker, 15 deputy speakers and 26 committee members. They are the highest authority in the entire federation. Astonished, Tang Wulin gasped, so many deputy speakers. Ji Qi nodded. This is something beyond anyone's control. It is necessary in order to balance out the great forces. Big organizations such as the Spirit Pagoda and the War God Hall have one resident deputy speaker position each. Our Tang sect and Shrek Academy had one originally too. However, Shrek Academy chose to withdraw from this resident deputy speaker's position about 6,000 years ago and continued to remain in absolute neutrality. On the other hand, the position of our Tang sect's resident deputy speaker has been abolished during this parliamentary restructuring. At this point, his expression was filled with righteous indignation. 231 members of parliament including 42 bureau members formed the highest authority in the federation. Tang Wulin memoized this quietly in his heart. Ji Qi continued to speak. Meanwhile, the federal parliament is mainly divided into two sides, the Hawk faction and the Dove faction, and also a fixed independent faction. However, the independent faction has a relatively lower headcount with just over 20 people, so it doesn't have much say in many of the critical affairs. Then when Shrek Academy withdrew from it, the independent faction was without a leader and its influence became even weaker. The so-called Hawk faction style of governance is relatively radical and forceful. The faction advocates war as its foreign policy. On the other hand, the Dove faction is the direct opposite. The Dove faction's governance style is conservative and gentle. The faction prioritizes peace overall and doesn't advocate for war. It's even maintained a rather resistant attitude toward some of the military's research and development. The Dove faction has always assumed that too much research into soul weapons will certainly result in accelerating the depletion of the continent's resources and detrimental to mankind's development. However, the Dove faction advocates for research and development in space exploration to look for new environments suitable for our living condition in outer space. On this, the Hawk faction is also supportive because they think that the Federation should possess even more powerful armed forces so they can colonize when they explore extraterrestrially. This is because no one knows if any other life forms exist in outer space. How can we protect ourselves without powerful abilities? Both factions have their respective justifications. Thus, each of these factions has its batch of loyal supporters. Tang Wulin had an expression of deep thought. Let me guess. The Spirit Pagoda is a strong supporter of the Hawk faction? On the other hand, our Shrek Academy and Tang sect are more supportive of the Dove faction. Ji Qi nodded. True enough. During the earlier periods, our Tang sect and Shrek Academy had always been supporters of the Dove faction. Even though the Academy withdrew from the Parliament, its students were still spread out all over the world, after all. It wasn't just on the Dove faction's side, there were even some key players in the Hawk faction that originated from our Academy. This is also the reason why the Academy remained neutral. On the Hawk faction's side, the most direct supporters are the Spirit Pagoda and the Battle God Hall. They are considered the main pillar of the Hawk faction. Even so, most of the public leans toward the Dove faction, fearing the continent's resources would be depleted before the time due to war. Thus, the Dove faction dominated the parliament most of the time, until this incident happened. The great explosion of 2 Godkiller rank fixed soul ammunitions has changed the status quo. The Dove faction had been about to strengthen its position over the Hawk faction. Then the attack caused the destruction of Shrek Academy, and our Tang sect suffered severely as well. The Hawk faction took the offensive and led public opinion with the great of the Holy Spirit cult and managed to get the upper hand. After the re-election, the Hawk faction occupied over 110 seats in the parliament. The Hawk faction gained such absolute dominance that even the majority of the independent faction was on the Hawk faction's side. It's become very difficult for the Dove faction to have any influence over the political situation now. Tang Wulin's mind was running at high speed after listening to Ji Qi's explanation. One could infer a lot about the political situation in the federal parliament, one could tell just by hearing his words. Shrek Academy and the Tang sect were struck with catastrophe, so it was the Federation's Hawk faction that made the most gains, without a doubt. Meanwhile, the Spirit Pagoda and the War God Hall were the supporters behind the Hawk faction. Even though there was no solid evidence that could prove that they were related to the Holy Spirit cult, the turn of events had genuinely been beneficial for them. Moreover, even if they were not involved, should their possible connivance be disregarded? The Spirit Pagoda's headquarters and Shrek City were located just a stone's throw away. Relatively speaking, the Spirit Pagoda's influence over the continent had even exceeded the Tang sect's. At the time, why were Shrek City and the Spirit Pagoda not the chosen as targets of the two Godkiller-ranked fixed soul ammunitions? Had that been the case, the resulting impact on the continent would have been even greater. Thus, it was utterly impossible not to suspect the Spirit Pagoda. Tang Wulin squinted his eyes as the aura radiating from his entire body was undergoing a transformation. The name list is here. Those in blue represent the Dove faction, red represents the Hawk faction and white is the Independent faction. Ji Chi pushed a stack of name lists right in front of Tang Wulin's face. Just by judging at the colors on the surface, Tang Wulin could see that the Hawk faction's numbers were overwhelming. The Hawk faction alone had over 50% of the seats. It seems like there's not much difference. The Dove faction has over 80 seats as well. If they manage to win over the Independent faction, said Tang Wulin. That's not the case. Ji Chi hastily spoke, we can't judge the parliamentary seats on numbers alone. In reality, the final election for the Dove faction and the Hawk faction is still dependent on the public support in order to determine the leadership for the next 5 years. In the history of the parliament, such a huge disparity has rarely been seen. Besides the Hawk faction being in power at present, it has also determined that Dove faction will not make significant gains for a very long period of time. The Hawk faction is very cunning. Even though they've always supported a war, they stand by the slogan of keeping the fighting outside of our territory. At the same time, they've also expressed their willingness to ensure the safety of our soldiers to the best of their abilities. Also, the Holy Spirit cult's few attempted attacks in recent years have resulted in high fatalities for our citizens. In reality, the Hawk faction has an approval rating of 65% and this is unprecedented in our history. Tang Wulin nodded. I see. As he was speaking, he read the name list in his hand. Most of the names on the name list were unfamiliar to him. Occasionally, he would find some rather familiar names like Yu Jingyu's grandfather, the army's big brother that represented the Southern Army Corps. Surprisingly, he was a member of the Hawk faction. Moreover, he was a bureau member but not a deputy speaker. No one from the Blood God Army held a post in the parliament and this was perhaps due to the Blood God Army being relatively independent. The names that Tang Wulin was familiar with from the Tang sect did not appear even once on the members of the parliament name list. It was simply as if they were completely swept clean off the list. He could tell that the parliament's prejudice toward the Tang sect was severe. It seems like the parliament dislikes us very much, said Tang Wulin in a deep voice. Ji Chi smiled bitterly and spoke, this has been a long-standing issue that began as early as before the founding of the Doluo Federation. In reality, our Tang sect is standing firmly on the Star Luo Empire's side. If not for us, the Star Luo Empire would have long since been destroyed. At the time, the Almighty without equal of his time, the Holy Ice Doluo Huiyuhao, relied on his efforts to suppress the Federation's predecessor, the Sun Moon Empire. Only through that did he manage to sustain the Star Luo Empire. As a result, relatively speaking, our status in Star Luo has far exceeded the Spirit Pagoda over there. Of course, the Spirit Pagoda was supposedly built single-handedly by Holy Ice Doluo as well. Only that the modern Spirit Pagoda has already turned away from its original intentions and is no longer what it was when the Holy Ice Doluo founded it all those years ago. Tang Wulin nodded. He had visited the Star Luo Empire before, so he had a deep impression of this issue, for even the Dragon King boy was a disciple of the Tang sect. The Tang sect was considered to be something like a great ancestor that founded Star Luo Empire. For that reason, the Tang sect could still maintain its strength over there. Back in the beginning, when Tang sect still had Shrek Academy's support, there was nothing the federal government could do even if they were very dissatisfied with us. Those government officers elected by the members of parliament have always wanted to demoralize us. It is only because of the firm foundation of the academy and our headquarters being located in Shrek City that there is nothing they can do to us. I didn't expect that they would use the Holy Spirit cult's attack on us this time and they pulled off such a sinister trick. Our Tang sect is going to become an illegal organization on the continent soon. Tang Wulin laughed coldly. Are they trying to remove the obstacle to clear the path to war with the Star Luo Empire? Perhaps they are afraid that we'll be passing messages to the Star Luo Empire. Ji Chi nodded. Highly possible. Thus, our original influence over the army is being pushed away and suppressed to such severity. There are even people being persecuted. The situation is not looking good at all. Tang Wulin could imagine that. The issues and relationships in this were certainly complicated. However, it was apparent that this case was the result of the Tang sect's existence interfering with the interests of the warmongers. The Tang sect had always had a low profile compared to the Spirit Pagoda, so the common people were not even aware of the persecution of the Tang sect. As he listened to Ji Qi's analysis, Tang Wulin continued to read the name list. He suddenly saw a very familiar name when his gaze landed on the Dove faction's name list. Huh? Why is she in here? Tang Wulin pointed a finger at a blue name, his voice filled with astonishment. It was Mo Lan. The name could not be any more familiar to Tang Wulin. She was the conductor of the Soul train Tang Wulin boarded long ago. She did not mind sacrificing herself to protect the passengers on the train. She narrowly escaped death, and it was indeed the Holy Spirit Doluo Ye Li who saved her life. Afterward, Heaven Do City was struck by the Holy Spirit cult's attack while something happened on Tang Wulin's side as well. He attempted to contact Mo Lan, but he never managed to get through to her original contact number. He truly did not expect to see this familiar name here. Even so, was this Mo Lan truly that Mo Lan? Tang Wulin felt astonished, but his gaze began to shift soon after. Are you talking about her? This person is a rising political star from the Dove faction. Speaking of which, she had a rather pitiful life experience. She was once a conductor of a soul train. Later, she became a hero when she protected the common people during a confrontation with the Holy Spirit cult scoundrels in which she was severely injured. Her father was initially the Heaven Do City's consul and a member of parliament. However, her father died in the attack of the Holy Spirit cult. At the time, she was a member of the Heaven Do City's officials under her father's request. When Heaven Do City was in chaos, she stood out in leading the officers to handle the emergency. Not only was her father sacrificed, but her husband and child died as well in the great explosion. She endured immense sorrow and pain to comfort the common people while keeping complete control over the situation. She is truly a strong woman. Upon listening to Ji Qi's words, Tang Wulin could not help feeling immense sorrow in his heart. The consul Mo Wu was deceased, and even Sister Mo Lan's husband and child were. How much pain did she have to endure? Tang Wulin clenched his fists subconsciously. Holy Spirit cult? The Holy Spirit cult? These evil soul masters who have committed sins will not die in peace. Tang Wulin was bursting with an unprecedented frenzy of rage. What happened afterward? Asked Tang Wulin closely as he suppressed the emotions in his heart. Ji Qi answered, Madame Mo Lan received Heaven Do City's huge support, especially from the common people. During the parliament's re-election, she was nominated to the post of Heaven Do City's representative. Thus, she became one of the youngest members of parliament from the Dove faction. Simultaneously, she's holding the post of deputy consul for Heaven Do City, while the consul's post is held by the deputy speaker of the parliament. Most of the affairs are handled by Madame Mo Lan. She's been acting peculiar lately. Apart from sleep, she spends most of her time at work. It's as if she's working to numb herself to forget the pain. Tang Wulin felt uneasy as he listened to Ji Qi. Where's she now? Is she in Heaven Do City or Mingju? Asked Tang Wulin. Ji Qi spoke. The parliament recently convened the third plenary meeting, so she's supposed to be in Mingju. The meeting's agenda is to discuss the use of military force on the Star Luo Empire. Tang Wulin raised his brows. Can we locate her residence? Ji Qi answered, we should be able to do that. However, due to the Holy Spirit cult's malice, the security for the parliament members is extremely tight now. Even if we can locate her, you may not necessarily be able to meet her. Do you know her? Tang Wulin nodded quietly. His lips cracked into a bitter smile. Sister Mo Lan, are you still all right? With a heavy heart, Tang Wulin left the Tang sect's point of contact. He had gained much from this trip. It was beneficial for him to understand the overall political situation of the continent. However, he also received news about the death of Mo Lan's family. Tang Wulin boarded the taxi and headed to Mingju Blacksmiths Association. No matter how tight the security was, he would think of a way to meet Sister Mo Lan. If not for anything else, he just wished to comfort her. As for the security, Tang Wulin was quite confident that he could pass through with ease. The Mingju Blacksmiths Association was no smaller than the Blacksmiths Association headquarters located in Heavendo City. After all, Mingju City was the Federation's capital, so high-quality forging work was in demand as well. Surprisingly, Tang Wulin felt that the place was desolate when he walked into the Mingju Blacksmiths Association. Shouldn't this place be filled with an endless stream of blacksmiths? Although the people who chose to be blacksmiths were few, there was still a good number of blacksmiths who were of low and medium ranks. Many blacksmiths below rank 3 were not even sole masters. They relied on their proficiency in their skills to make a living. After all, the metals forged by these people were good enough to produce ordinary mechas. Nonetheless, Tang Wulin described the place he saw on the first level of the spacious Blacksmiths Association as deserted. There were fewer than 10 blacksmiths. The place appeared unusually empty and there was hardly any service staff around. What was going on? Tang Wulin walked to a counter in puzzlement. The service staff on the other side of the counter stood up. "Hello. May I know if you're here for a mission, or are you a blacksmith?" Tang Wulin answered, "I'm a blacksmith from another place." "What happened here? Why is the association so deserted?" The service staff spoke with a bitter smile. "The place has been recalled by the military." "Could it be that you have yet to receive the military requisition order?" "There's a possibility of an impending war, so the military is hiring blacksmiths with high wages, especially blacksmiths below rank 5. The military is providing a large number of rare metals for the blacksmiths to forge, so it's an attractive deal for the blacksmiths who are trying to break through to the spirit forging realm. Hence, there are so few blacksmiths on our floor. However, the military requisition deal is not so attractive for the blacksmiths above rank 5, but the high-ranking blacksmiths are not on our level." Upon listening to him, Tang Wulin was astonished. "I thought that the parliament is considering the possibility of dispatching our army to wage war. Why are they hiring the blacksmiths?" The service staff smiled coldly. "What do you mean considering? I thought that they've already mobilized the army earlier. I have a friend in the army who has already been transferred to the East Sea. As a formality, the parliament is only carrying out an assessment." Tang Wulin frowned. Has the situation reached this extent? The Hawk faction is truly impatient. Although the situation benefited him as he strived to rebuild Shrek Academy, he truly did not wish to witness the waging of war. He could not say that he felt good about the Star Luo Empire, but everyone on Star Luo planet was human. Once war was waged, the people would certainly be plunged into misery and suffering. "Understood, thank you. Is there any forging mission that is available, such as those of a higher rank?" asked Tang Wulin. "Of course. The current forging missions are piling up like a mountain. If you're a rank 3 or rank 4 blacksmith, our forging missions are endless. May I take a look at your blacksmith's badge?" Tang Wulin smiled and procured his blacksmith's badge before he hung it in front of his chest. The badge had a background of gold with black starlights. 7 black stars shimmering with radiance adorned the badge. Upon seeing the badge, the service staff was immediately stunned. He could not help saying, 7 stars. A saint craftsman? In the blacksmith's world, the badge was used to represent one's rank and status. Even for such a large division in Mingju, it was still exceedingly rare to find a saint craftsman. The blacksmith's badge was categorized as follows. 1 to 2 stars. Blue background with white stars, Master. 3 to 4 stars. Orange background with yellow stars, Grandmaster. 5 to 6 stars. White background with purple stars, Master Craftsman. 7 to 8 stars. Gold background with black stars, Saint Craftsman. 9 stars. White gold background with red stars, Divine Craftsman. As soon as Tang Wulin's badge was shown, he immediately revealed that he was a Saint Craftsman who could perform soul forging. He was a rare find and was at the apex of all the blacksmiths on the entire continent. The reason 3-word battle armor masters were far fewer than 2-word battle armor masters on the continent was not because the 2-word battle armor masters had yet to cultivate to that extent, but because there were too few saint craftsmen. They were too busy forging 3-word battle armors. The 3-word battle armor needed to be made with high-quality metal, and the blacksmith would need to start all over if the process failed. Thus, many 2-word battle armor masters would rather keep his or her battle armor than upgrade without adequate assurance and financial support. Thus, any saint craftsman had a well-respected status in the blacksmith's world or even the entire continent. It was almost equal to the rank of a division president of a city's blacksmith association. This video will end here. Like video and subscribe to my channel.